In 2016, a young nurse from Savannah, Georgia, was convicted of murder, yet there was no weapon, no witnesses, and no body. Her name was Danielle Frost. The alleged victim? Her longtime boyfriend, 28-year-old Chris Lyle, who vanished without a trace one stormy night in late September. The jury called it justice. The media called it shocking. But what really happened inside the quiet two-story house on Riverbend Drive remains a puzzle no one can fully explain. Danielle's trial became a national obsession. A bright, soft-spoken ICU nurse with no criminal record, accused of murdering the man she once planned to marry. The prosecution painted her as a jealous girlfriend driven by rage. They claimed she lured Chris home after an argument, killed him, and disposed of his body. Their motive? A bitter breakup. Their evidence? Circumstantial at best. There were no fingerprints, no blood, no confession. Only a series of eerie coincidences that seemed too strange to ignore. It started on September 29, 2016. Chris left work at 7:42 p.m. Security cameras caught him walking to his car. He sent a final text to his sister at 8:03 p.m., heading home. "See you this weekend." Then, nothing. His phone went dark. His car was later found abandoned near a fishing pier 12 miles away. The keys were still in the ignition. His wallet and phone were gone. Police zeroed in on Danielle within hours. A neighbor claimed they heard shouting from her house around 9 p.m. Another swore they saw her white Honda Civic speeding down Riverbend Drive minutes later. When officers searched her home, they found the carpet freshly cleaned, the washing machine running, and a faint chemical smell in the air. Danielle's story didn't help. She told detectives she hadn't seen Chris in days. But text records revealed he'd messaged her hours before he disappeared. Investigators said her timeline kept changing. First she claimed she was at a friend's house that evening, then she said she was home alone, reading. They seized her phone and discovered a string of deleted messages between her and Chris. One read, "We need to talk. Come over." Still, nothing concrete linked her to violence. No blood, no signs of a struggle, not even a suspicious fingerprint. The prosecution leaned on character attacks instead. They unearthed heated arguments from the couple's past. Friends testified that Chris planned to end the relationship. They painted Danielle as a woman who couldn't handle rejection. And the jury believed it. But behind the dramatic headlines, cracks in the case ran deep. Forensic experts questioned the so-called cleaning chemicals police claimed to smell. Independent tests found nothing unusual. The neighbor who reported shouting later admitted they couldn't be sure which house the sounds came from. And those deleted text messages? Digital analysts testified they could have been removed by anyone if Chris's phone was still in play. Then came the strangest discovery of all. A week before the trial began, a fisherman reported seeing a man matching Chris's description on a remote dock 50 miles from Savannah. The tip was dismissed as unreliable. But in court, Danielle's attorney revealed that Chris's bank card had been used at a gas station near that same dock, 2 days after his disappearance. The charge was small, just a bottle of water. But the timestamp was undeniable. The jury heard the evidence. They deliberated for 9 hours. In the end, they sided with the prosecution. Danielle Frost was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Reporters called it a victory for circumstantial justice. Danielle barely reacted as the verdict was read. She just stared ahead, silent, pale, her hands trembling slightly as the cuffs closed around her wrists. But if the story ended there, it wouldn't still haunt Savannah. 2 months after the conviction, an anonymous letter arrived at the Chatham County Sheriff's Office. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, a blurry image of a man standing on a foggy pier. The man wore a gray hoodie. His face was half hidden. But to anyone who knew Chris Lyle, the resemblance was unmistakable. The letter contained only 4 words, scrawled in red ink. She didn't do it. Detectives rushed to trace the photo. No luck. The camera metadata had been wiped. The postmark led nowhere. When investigators brought the photo to Danielle in prison, she whispered only one thing. "That's him. That's Chris." Then, in February 2017, another shock. A fisherman found a phone at the bottom of a marsh 20 miles from where Chris's car was discovered. The phone was waterlogged but recoverable. When technicians powered it on, the lock screen flickered to life. Chris Lyle's smiling face stared back. Inside were messages never before seen. One, sent at 8:17 p.m. the night he disappeared, read, "Don't trust anyone. Meeting someone tonight. If I'm not back, call the number in my glove box." But there was no number in his glove box. Only an empty envelope. Who was Chris planning to meet? And why did he warn someone not to trust anyone, moments before vanishing? Danielle's lawyer immediately filed for an appeal, arguing that this new evidence proved Chris might still be alive. Yet prosecutors doubled down, claiming the photo and phone were stage distractions. The court refused to reopen the case. Danielle remained behind bars. Meanwhile, locals whispered about strange sightings along the Georgia coast. A man seen sleeping under a bridge. A drifter matching Chris's build, always wearing a gray hoodie, who vanished when approached. Police followed lead after lead. Each ended in dead ends. Still, the Marsh phone raised chilling questions. If Chris staged his disappearance, why target Danielle? If someone else was involved, who planted the phone, and why wait months to reveal it? Family members began their own search, retracing Chris's last known movements. They uncovered security footage from a bait shop near the pier where his car was found. The grainy video showed a man entering the shop at 9:22 p.m. the night of the disappearance. He wore a baseball cap pulled low, face hidden. But on his left wrist was a distinct tattoo, a compass with the letter O at its center. Chris had the same tattoo. The footage was time-stamped 30 minutes after Danielle's neighbor claimed to hear shouting at her house. If the man was Chris, he was alive while Danielle supposedly killed him. Yet just as the family prepared to go public, the bait shop mysteriously burned down. The security footage, gone. Danielle's appeal loomed. The anonymous letters kept coming. Each contained only fragments of clues. A torn ferry ticket. A scrap of a map with a single X marked in red. Someone out there wanted the truth found. Or buried. And then, one late summer morning, a park ranger patrolling a deserted stretch of coastline stumbled upon something wedged between two rocks. A weathered leather wallet. Inside was Chris Lyle's driver's license and a single Polaroid photo of Danielle, taken from outside her prison window. Who put it there? Was Chris alive, taunting the system? Or was someone else orchestrating a far darker game? The answers waited in the shadows. But the next revelation would shatter everything Savannah thought it knew about the night Chris Lyle disappeared. The discovery of Chris Lyle's wallet should have been a breakthrough. Instead, it deepened the mystery. The leather was dry, despite a week of heavy coastal rain. There were no fingerprints, no salt residue, no trace of sand. It looked placed, almost staged. Inside, the Polaroid of Danielle Frost glowed like a threat, grainy, slightly overexposed, taken through the tiny barred window of her cell. How could someone photograph her inside a maximum security prison without guards noticing? And why leave the picture with Chris's ID? Detectives combed the area, but there were no tire tracks, no footprints, nothing. The nearest road was nearly a mile away. Whoever left the wallet knew how to disappear. When prison officials questioned Danielle, she trembled but didn't cry. "That's not Chris," she whispered, staring at the Polaroid. "What do you mean?" an investigator asked. "The way he does things," she said. "If Chris was alive, he wouldn't send me a picture of myself. That's someone else." Someone else. The phrase sent chills through the room. 2 nights later, security alarms at the Chatham County Courthouse blared at 2:14 a.m. A motion sensor in the evidence room triggered, then shut off seconds later. Guards found nothing missing, nothing broken. But when technicians reviewed the footage, one frame made their blood run cold. For exactly half a second, a shadowy figure appeared in the far corner. A man in a gray hoodie, head lowered, face blurred. The timestamp? 2:14 a.m., the exact moment the alarm sounded. The footage was clean. No signs of editing. And pinned to the evidence locker door was a single post-it note. 4 words. "She never killed me. If Chris was alive, he was taunting the system." If someone else planted the note, they knew every security blind spot in the courthouse. Either way, Danielle's conviction now looked dangerously unstable. Desperate to build an appeal, Danielle's lawyer, Avery Mendez, tracked down every witness who testified against her. One name stood out: Caleb Morris, the neighbor who claimed he heard shouting the night Chris disappeared. Mendez scheduled an interview, but when he arrived at Morris's home, the house was empty. Doors unlocked, dishes still wet in the sink. Morris's car sat in the driveway with the keys in the ignition. Inside, a single envelope lay on the kitchen table. No address, no stamp, just one word scrawled across the front: stop. Police launched a search, but Morris was gone. Not a trace. Remember the mysterious text on Chris's recovered phone? "If I'm not back, call the number in my glove box." For months, investigators insisted nothing was there. But during a second forensic sweep, a rookie deputy noticed a thin seam beneath the felt lining. Beneath it lay a scrap of paper, water-stained but intact. It wasn't a phone number. It was a set of GPS coordinates. The location pointed to a stretch of abandoned railway about 40 miles inland, a place locals called the Cut, where freight trains once hauled timber through miles of swamp. When deputies arrived, they found nothing but rusted tracks and pine trees. But as they prepared to leave, one officer noticed something odd. A single wooden cross, freshly painted white, stood upright in the mud. At its base lay a sealed plastic container. Inside, a burner phone, battery dead, SIM card removed. On the back of the phone, etched with a sharp object, were 3 letters: DF. Danielle Frost. News of the discovery leaked within hours. Online forums exploded with theories. Was Chris alive and framing Danielle for reasons unknown? Was someone trying to free her or drive her insane? The warden ordered Danielle transferred to a higher security facility for her own protection. But the move only added fuel to the fire. On the night of the transfer, the prison van left the gate at 11:07 p.m. with a full GPS signal. At 11:28 p.m., the signal blinked out for exactly 7 minutes. When it reappeared, the van was back on course. Guards reported no detour, no stop. Yet dashcam footage told a different story. For those missing 7 minutes, the camera showed nothing but static. Later, Danielle told her lawyer something chilling. "I heard a voice through the metal wall," she whispered. It said, "Don't trust the driver." Meanwhile, Chris's older sister, Natalie, began her own investigation. Convinced her brother was alive, she followed a trail of bank transactions stretching across 3 states. The charges were small: coffee, gas, cheap motels, but each one used Chris's old debit card. Then Natalie found something the police had missed. Months before Chris disappeared, he had secretly rented a storage unit in Jacksonville, Florida. Inside, she discovered boxes of camping gear, a stack of prepaid phones, and a single spiral notebook filled with coded entries. At the center of one page, written in block letters, Project Harbor. Natalie brought the notebook to detectives, but before they could decode it, the unit caught fire in the middle of the night. Security footage again showed a man in a gray hoodie walking calmly away from the blaze. Determined to decode the notebook, Natalie enlisted a cryptography professor from Savannah State. After days of analysis, he cracked the cipher. Project Harbor wasn't a plan. It was a location. Specifically, a derelict marina on Blackbird Island, accessible only by boat during high tide. Deputies organized a nighttime search. Fog rolled thick over the water as they approached the island. Among the rotting docks and collapsed boathouses, they found a single shack still standing. Inside, a lantern burned low. On the wall hung a map of Georgia's coastline with red X's marked along remote inlets. On a table lay a stack of Polaroids. Each photo showed Danielle in prison, sleeping, eating, walking the yard, angles impossible to capture without inside access. And beneath the Polaroids, a final photograph stopped everyone cold. It showed Chris Lyle, alive, thin, eyes hollow. Behind him stood Caleb Morris, the missing neighbor. Both men stared directly at the camera. Scrawled across the bottom in black marker, "Next tide, midnight." At 11:47 p.m., boats surrounded the island. Deputies swept every structure. Nothing. No footprints. No boat wakes. But at precisely midnight, a lone flare streaked across the sky from the marshes 2 miles away. Crews raced toward it. They found an empty skiff rocking in the tide. Inside sat another burner phone, powered on and recording. A man's voice whispered through the speaker. "Truth is a tide. It always comes in. Stop chasing us or she dies in here." The call ended with a faint splash. Technicians traced the signal. It originated from inside the prison where Danielle was being held. FBI agents flooded the facility. After hours of interrogation, one guard finally cracked. He admitted he'd been approached by a private investigator months earlier and paid to smuggle in a miniature camera and transmitter. The guard never saw the man's face, only the hood of a gray sweatshirt. But he did reveal one critical detail. The man used the alias Harbor. The same word scrawled in Chris's notebook. When agents confronted Danielle with the new evidence, she went pale. "I know who Harbor is," she said finally. Her voice trembled. "It's not Chris." She refused to say more until she spoke with her lawyer. Hours later, during a private meeting, she dropped a bombshell. "Harbor isn't a person," she whispered. "It's a code. It means home. It's where Chris hides when he's scared." Danielle claimed Chris had a pattern. Whenever life became overwhelming, family fights, job stress, he vanished for days, sometimes weeks. But this time felt different. Before he disappeared, he confided something terrifying. "He said someone was after him," she said. "Someone he couldn't name. He said if anything happened, people would think I did it. He promised to leave signs. But I didn't think," her voice broke. "I didn't think he'd do all this." If Danielle was telling the truth, Chris had orchestrated the entire nightmare, framing her, taunting police, burning evidence, all to escape an unnamed threat. But if that was true, who was the second man in the photograph? Why involve the neighbor? And who was sending the letters if Chris was already watching from the shadows? Days later, as agents prepared to reopen the case, a final envelope arrived at the FBI field office. Inside was a single sheet of paper soaked in salt water. 5 words, written in Chris's unmistakable hand. "Don't dig. The harbor bleeds." No fingerprints. No DNA. Only a faint, metallic scent, like blood mixed with seawater. For investigators, the meaning was maddening. Was Chris warning them of danger? Or daring them to keep searching? For Danielle, the message was worse. If Chris was alive, she might be freed. But if the harbor bled, what if the next body? The night air over Blackbird Island grew heavy, thick with salt and a smell like iron. Deputies stood at the shoreline, radios hissing with static. The tide had already swallowed half the dock. Somewhere out there, maybe only yards away, Chris Lyle was either alive, dead, or something far worse. Inside the prison, Danielle sat in the visitor's room, pale and rigid as her lawyer read the latest message aloud. "Don't dig. The harbor bleeds." Her hands trembled against the cold metal table. For weeks she had begged them to keep searching. Now she wasn't so sure. "What if he's warning us?" she whispered. "What if digging is exactly what they want?" "Who?" her lawyer asked. She closed her eyes. "The people chasing him. The ones he was running from. You don't understand. If Chris is alive, they're coming for him. And maybe for me." Before he could answer, a guard burst through the door. His face was drained of color. "We just lost the prison's west camera feed," he said. "Again." Miles away on the island, floodlights flickered and died. Generators coughed, then went silent. Darkness rolled over the search team like a living thing. A scream cut through the night, sharp, human, then abruptly drowned by the roar of the tide. The radios went dead. Deputies scrambled for flashlights. Beams cut across the fog, catching only wet boards and shifting shadows. Then a flare burst overhead, blood red against the clouds. It spiraled once, twice, then hissed into the sea. At that same instant, every phone on the island lit up at once. No signal, no network. Just a single image. Chris Lyle's face. His eyes were open, wide, terrified. Behind him loomed a dark silhouette, a hood pulled low. The photo pulsed once on the screens, then vanished. Back at the prison, Danielle's own confiscated phone, locked away in an evidence drawer, lit up too. Guards swore they never touched it. On the screen, the same photo appeared, followed by a single line of text. Truth comes in with the tide. The message timestamp matched the exact second the flare disappeared. On Blackbird Island, water began rushing over the docks faster than the moon should allow. Deputies shouted to retreat, but the marshes gurgled with a sound that was not just water, a low, grinding moan that seemed to come from beneath the earth. Something metallic bobbed to the surface near the shack. A flashlight beam caught it, a small, rusted cage rising with the tide. Inside was a waterproof box. They dragged it onto the dock and forced it open. Inside lay a blood-stained compass etched with the letter L, Chris's signature to. Beside it, a scrap of paper, edges soaked and curling. 5 words. The harbor takes everyone back. Before anyone could react, the dock groaned and split. Cold black water surged upward, swallowing the box, the compass, and half the team's equipment in seconds. By dawn, Blackbird Island was empty again. No shack, no maps, no Polaroids. Only endless, silent water. The FBI called it an environmental collapse. Locals called it a curse. Danielle called it proof. They were there, she told her lawyer through tears. Chris was there. And someone else. Who? He pressed. Danielle's voice cracked. The man in the hood. The one he feared. He's real. And now he has Chris. But when the evidence box from the island was checked, the compass was gone. The blood-stained note was gone. Only the plastic container remained, bone-dry and perfectly clean, as if nothing had ever touched it. That night, long after the search was called off, a fisherman on the mainland heard soft knocking against his dock. When he stepped outside, a single object floated in the moonlit water. Chris Lyle's driver's license, perfectly dry, balanced atop the tide like a message. He turned it over. On the back, written in fresh red ink, were 2 chilling words. Not over. The harbor remains silent now, the tide coming in and out as always, hiding whatever waits beneath. Danielle Frost still sits behind bars, her conviction officially under review. Chris Lyle's face appears on missing person flyers across 3 states, though some swear they've seen him in passing crowds. A gray hood, a quick glance, gone before a second look. No one knows if Chris is alive. No one knows who Harbor truly is. And every time the tide rises over Blackbird Island, locals swear they hear faint knocking beneath the waves. It sounds like someone calling for help, or someone inviting you to follow. Either way, the water keeps its secrets. And somewhere, out there in the fog, the next move is already being planned.